There
I
were
ran to see my
complications
husband
during
in
the
the operating
surgery.
room. The corridors of Mercy
I don't
General
know if he'll
Hospital were a
recover.
blur of sterile white tiles and fluorescent lights that hummed with a headache-inducing buzz. My sneakers squeaked violently against the linoleum, a sharp, frantic rhythm that matched the pounding of my heart. I wasn't supposed to be back here, in the restricted surgical wing, but I didn't care. I was Dr. Keisha Vance. I had been a top neurosurgeon at this very hospital for 10 years before I took a sabbatical to raise our son. I knew the codes. I knew the layout. And I knew that when the chief of surgery calls you at 2 a.m. to tell you your husband has been in a catastrophic car accident, you don't wait in the lobby. Marcus? I gasped, turning the corner toward trauma or 3. My husband, Marcus Vance, was a man of invincibility. He was a hedge fund manager, a man who moved mountains of money with a smile, a man who promised me the world and delivered it wrapped in gold. He had left the house 4 hours ago for a late-night client meeting. I had kissed him goodbye, smelling his expensive cologne, never imagining the next time I'd see him, he would be broken on a table. The hallway 2 or 3 was strangely empty. Usually, a trauma case of this magnitude, a high-speed collision, the chief had said, would have nurses running, residents shouting, a chaotic symphony of saving a life. But it was quiet. Too quiet. The silence felt heavy, pressurized, like the air before a tornado touches down. I reached for the double doors, my hand trembling. I needed to see him. I needed to assess the damage. My medical brain was already running through scenarios: intracranial pressure, internal bleeding, shattered femurs. I was ready to fight God himself to keep him alive. Suddenly, a nurse stepped out from a side supply closet. She grabbed my arm. Her grip was like a vice. I spun around, ready to scream, ready to pull rank. Get off me. My husband is in there. Then I saw her face. It was Tasha. A senior surgical nurse I had worked with for a decade. A woman I had trusted with my patients' lives 1,000 times. But Tasha didn't look professional tonight. She looked terrified. Her face was ashen, her eyes darting down the hallway to the security cameras. Tasha? I whispered, the adrenaline spiking in my veins. Is he dead? Tasha pulled me harder, dragging me into the dark supply closet and letting the door click shut, leaving us in a sliver of shadow. Shoo, she hissed, her voice trembling. Listen to me, Dr. Vance. You cannot go in there. What are you talking about? Marcus is in there. I need to. He's not hurt, Keisha. Tasha whispered, the words rushing out of her. I froze. What? He's not hurt, she repeated. There was no accident. The chief, the trauma team, they aren't scrubbing in for surgery. They're scrubbing in for a procedure. A cover-up. My mind reeled. I don't understand. The police called me. The chief called me. They lied, Tasha said. Tears were welling in her eyes. I wasn't supposed to be on shift. I came back to get my phone. I heard them. Marcus, he set this up. He set you up. She looked at the door, then back at me. Quick, ma'am, hide and trust me. It's a trap. The hook sank in. The urgency in her voice broke through my confusion. This wasn't a medical emergency. It was a setup. A trap? I breathed. If you walk through those doors, Tasha whispered, you become the witness. You become the grieving widow who identifies the body. Once you identify him, it's over. You can never go back. Identify the body? I felt sick. You said he wasn't hurt. He isn't, Tasha said darkly. But the man on the table is. She pointed to a ventilation grate near the floor. The observation deck. The old gallery above or 3. It's been closed for renovations, but the key code is still the default. Go. Go up there. Watch. But do not let them see you. And whatever you do, do not scream. Tasha pushed me toward the service elevator. Go. Before they realize you're in the building. She slipped back out into the hall, acting as if she were just doing rounds. I stood there for a second, my world tilting on its axis. Marcus, a trap, a body? I moved. I took the service elevator up one floor. I found the door to the old observation gallery. It was dark, smelling of dust and old adrenaline. I crept down the tiered rows of seats to the glass partition that looked down into the operating room. And 10 minutes later, I froze when I saw him. It turns out that the OR was brightly lit. The surgical team was there, the chief of surgery, an anesthesiologist I recognized as a man with a gambling problem, and 2 nurses I didn't know. They weren't rushing. They were standing around the table, calm, methodical. On the table lay a body. It was draped in blue sheets, hooked up to monitors that were flatlining. The man was dead. I pressed my face to the glass, squinting. The man, he was built like Marcus. Broad shoulders. The same skin tone. The same haircut. But his face was a ruin. Massive trauma. Unrecognizable. Then, the side door of the OR opened. And my heart stopped. Marcus walked in. He wasn't on a stretcher. He wasn't bleeding. He wasn't even in a hospital gown. He was wearing black scrubs and surgical booties. He looked healthy. He looked vibrant. And he was holding a clipboard. I clapped a hand over my mouth to stifle the scream that tried to claw its way out of my throat. It was my husband. Alive. Well. And standing over his own corpse. Is it done? Marcus asked, his voice carried up to the gallery by the acoustics of the room. It was the voice I loved, the voice that whispered sweet nothings to me at night. But now, it was cold. Businesslike. It's done, the chief of surgery said, peeling off his gloves. Patient expired at 2:14 a.m. Massive blunt force trauma. DOA. And the dental records? Marcus asked. Swapped, the chief said. We uploaded your files to this John Doe's record 10 minutes ago. As far as the state, the insurance company, and the FBI are concerned, that is Marcus Vance on the table. Good, Marcus said. He looked down at the dead man, a poor soul who looked enough like him to pass in a closed casket. He didn't look sad. He looked satisfied. And my wife? Marcus asked. Is Keisha here yet? She just checked in at security, a nurse said. She's running up now. Perfect, Marcus smiled. It was a smile that chilled my blood. She'll come in, she'll see the trauma, she'll faint, and she'll identify the body in her grief. She's a doctor, but she's emotional. She won't look too close. She'll sign the death certificate. He walked over to a metal cart. On it sat a black briefcase. He opened it. It was stacked with cash. Here's the rest of the payment, Chief. 5 million. Clean. The chief took the briefcase. Pleasure doing business, Mr. Vance. Or. I guess it's Mr. Sterling now? Before we scrub in on this operation of deceit, if you believe that the truth is the only thing worth saving, hit that subscribe button. Join us. We tell stories for the ones who see what others miss. Now, let's get into the story. Sterling, Marcus nodded. I like the sound of that. New passport, new face, new life. He paused. And the best part, Marcus said, checking his watch, is that once Keisha signs that death certificate, the life insurance policy triggers. $20 million. Double indemnity for accidental death. It deposits into the joint account, which I emptied an hour ago. I sank to the floor of the gallery, darkness swimming at the edge of my vision. He hadn't just faked his death. He was framing me to be the witness to his great escape. He was stealing our life savings, the insurance money, and leaving me a grieving widow with nothing but a grave full of a stranger. And the hidden secret suspense hit me like a physical blow. I knew why. I knew why he needed to disappear. Last week, I had found a letter in his home office. A letter from the Federal Reserve. An audit. Marcus wasn't just a hedge fund manager. He was running a Ponzi scheme. He had stolen from the wrong people, the kind of people who don't file lawsuits, but file bodies. He was escaping the cartel. And he was leaving me behind to answer the door when they came knocking. He was going to leave me to be killed for his debts. I watched him down there, patting the chief on the back. He thought he had one. He thought his wife was a soft, emotional pawn. He forgot who I was. I am a neurosurgeon. I spend my life inside the human brain. I know how to cut out the rot without killing the patient. But in this case, the patient was the rot. I looked at the phone in my hand. I could call the police. But the chief of surgery was in on it. Who else? The police captain? No. I couldn't trust the system. I had to trust myself. Marcus thought I was running into the OR to cry over his body. He was wrong. I was going to walk into that OR. But I wasn't going to be the grieving widow. I stood up. I wiped my face. I fixed my hair. I was going to be the surgeon. And I was about to perform the most delicate operation of my life. The scrub sink water was scalding hot, but I couldn't feel it. My hands moved with muscle memory, scrubbing the skin until it was raw and red. Up to the elbows. Rinse. Repeat. I wasn't preparing for surgery. I was preparing for war. I put on a fresh gown. I snapped on latex gloves. I tied the mask over my face, hiding my rage, hiding my identity just enough to confuse them for the 3 seconds I would need. I stepped on the pedal to open the OR doors. They swung wide with a pneumatic hiss. The room went silent. The chief of surgery, Dr. Holloway, spun around, his face flushing with anger. Who is that? This is a restricted theater. Get out. I didn't stop. I walked straight to the table, my eyes locked on the mangled face of the John Doe they were trying to pass off as my husband. I am the next of kin, I said, my voice muffled by the mask but unmistakably authoritative. And I am the chief of neuro. I am identifying the body. Holloway froze. He recognized my eyes. Keisha. Dr. Vance. You shouldn't be here. You're in shock. Please, let us handle this. Handle what, doctor? I asked, reaching the table. I grabbed the chart from the foot of the bed. The blunt force trauma? Or the bank transfer? Holloway's eyes darted to the corner of the room. There, standing by the crash cart, wearing scrubs and a surgical mask, was Marcus. He had his back to me, pretending to organize instruments. He was tense, his shoulders hunched. He was waiting for me to scream, to collapse, to play the grieving widow so he could slip out the back door. I looked down at the body. This man, I said, my voice clinical, loud enough to echo off the tiled walls, is approximately 5'10". Marcus is 6'1". This man has a healed fracture on his left clavicle. Marcus has never broken a bone in his life. I looked up at Holloway. And this man, I said, ripping the sheet down to expose the corpse's chest, has a pacemaker scar. Marcus ran a marathon last month. You expect me to believe he grew a pacemaker in the ambulance? Keisha, please, Holloway stammered, sweating. The trauma, swelling, it distorts the features. It doesn't distort medical history. I snapped. I threw the chart on the floor. This is fraud. This is desecration of a corpse. And you, I pointed at Holloway, are an accessory to a federal crime. Marcus turned around. He couldn't help himself. His arrogance demanded he take control. Keisha, stop it, he barked, his voice muffled by his mask. He realized his mistake instantly. I looked at him. I didn't look surprised. I looked bored. Hello, Marcus, I said. Nice scrubs. They suit you better than the suit. He ripped off his mask. His face was twisted in a snarl. You ruin everything. You couldn't just stay in the lobby? You couldn't just cry like a normal wife? I'm not a normal wife, I said, stepping closer to him. I'm the woman whose bank account you just drained. $20 million, Marcus? Really? That's your exit strategy? It's my money, he shouted. I earned it. I built this life. And you were just dragging me down. I needed a clean break. You needed a getaway car, I corrected. Because the Federal Reserve audit isn't just a letter, is it? It's an indictment. And the people you stole from, the Sinaloa cartel, they aren't sending lawyers. They're sending cleaners. Marcus went pale. How do you know about the cartel? I found your burner phone bill, I lied. And I did a little math. You aren't running away to start a new life. You're running because you're a dead man walking. They won't find me. Marcus yelled, pulling a gun from the waistband of his scrubs. The nurses screamed. Holloway backed away, hands up. I have a new face booked in Brazil. Marcus ranted, waving the gun. I have the money. I just needed you to sign the death certificate. Why do you have to make everything so difficult? He aimed the gun at me. Sign it, he hissed, pointing to the paperwork on the counter. Sign the certificate. Declare me dead. And I walk out of here. If you don't, I'll make you the patient on that table. I looked at the gun. My heart rate was 140, but my hands were steady. No, I said. Sign it. I can't, I said calmly. Because I've already initiated the autopsy. What? While I was upstairs, I said, I called the county medical examiner. Dr. Richards. He's on his way. He wants to see the body personally. Apparently, a high-speed collision with no skid marks is suspicious. You called the me? Marcus looked like he was going to vomit. And, I continued, taking a step toward him, I locked the doors. I held up my ID badge. Code Black, I said. Hospital lockdown. Active shooter protocol. I triggered it from the hallway panel before I scrubbed in. The elevators are disabled. The stairwells are maglocked. No one gets in. No one gets out. Not even you. Undo it. Marcus screamed, jamming the gun barrel into my forehead. Unlock the doors. I can't, I said, staring into his eyes. Only the SWAT team can override a code black now. And they're about 3 minutes out. Marcus looked at the doors. He looked at the chief. He looked at the dead man on the table. He was trapped. He had staged a death, but he had trapped himself in a tomb. But the hidden secret suspense wasn't just the lockdown. It was who was outside the lockdown. My phone, which I had slipped into my scrub pocket, buzzed. It was a text from Tasha, the nurse who had warned me. They're here. The men in the black SUV. They aren't police. They're breaking through the ER entrance. The cartel. They hadn't waited for the news. They had tracked Marcus's phone. The same phone he had used to transfer the money. He hadn't ditched it. He was too arrogant. Marcus, I said softly. Do you hear that? Hear what? Sirens? No, I said. No sirens. The police are 5 minutes away. But someone else is closer. Crash. The sound of glass shattering came from the hallway outside the suite. Heavy boots running on tile. Those aren't cops, I whispered. Cops announce themselves. Marcus lowered the gun, his eyes wide with terror. Who is it? It's your investors, I said. I think they want a refund. You called them? He shrieked. I didn't have to, I said. You kept your GPS on, you idiot. The doors to the anteroom shook. Someone was kicking them. Open up. We know you're in there, Vance. A voice shouted. It wasn't a police negotiator. It was a guttural, foreign accent. Marcus scrambled back, hiding behind the surgical table, using his own fake corpse as a shield. Hide me. Keisha, hide me. Hide you? I asked. You wanted to be dead, Marcus. Now is your chance. Please, he begged, tears mixing with the sweat on his face. I'll give you the money. I'll give it all back. Just don't let them take me. I looked at the chief of surgery, who was cowering in the corner. Dr. Holloway, I said. Open the supply closet. What? The closet. I barked. Holloway opened the narrow door. Get in, I told Marcus. That's a trap, he yelled. You'll lock me in. The alternative, I said, gesturing to the main doors which were buckling under the assault, is them. Marcus looked at the doors. He looked at the closet. He ran. He threw himself into the supply closet among the mops and buckets. I slammed the door shut. I didn't lock it. There was no lock. I did something better. I grabbed a canister of nitrous oxide from the anesthesia cart. I jammed a tube under the closet door crack. I opened the valve. Sleep tight, I whispered. Then, I turned to the chief. Help me, I ordered. Do what? Move the body, I said. We need to make this look convincing. We flipped the John Doe onto the floor. We knocked over the instrument tray. I smeared blood from a sponge onto my own gown. I made it look like a struggle. A murder. When the cartel broke through the doors 10 seconds later, they didn't find a calm surgeon. They found a hysterical, blood-soaked wife screaming over a pile of debris. He's gone. I screamed, pointing to the open ventilation duct in the ceiling, which was too small for a human, but they didn't know that. He went up. He took the money and went up. The lead hitman, a giant of a man with a scar across his face, looked at the vent. He looked at the dead body on the floor, the John Doe. He looked at me. He left you? He tried to kill me. I sobbed. Go. Get him. The hitman didn't check the closet. They didn't check the body. They saw a vent, a screaming woman, and a ticking clock before the cops arrived. Roof, the leader yelled. They stampeded out of the OR, heading for the stairs to the roof. I waited until their footsteps faded. Then, I turned off the nitrous oxide. I opened the closet door. Marcus was slumped against the back wall, unconscious, drooling, the gun lying limp in his hand. Vital signs stable, I muttered, checking his pulse. He's just high. I looked at Dr. Holloway. When the police get here, I said, my voice calm again, you are going to tell them exactly what happened. You are going to tell them Marcus held us hostage. You are going to tell them he killed the John Doe to fake his death. And you are going to tell them he tried to kill me. Why would I do that? Holloway asked, trembling. I'm an accomplice. Because, I said, pulling his personnel file up on the room's computer terminal, if you don't, I'll give the FBI the file on the other 3 accidental deaths that happened in your or last year. The ones you covered up for cash. Holloway slumped. Okay. I'll talk. Good. I picked up Marcus's gun with a sterile cloth. I wiped his prints. Then, I pressed my prints onto it. And I placed it in my pocket. Wait, Holloway said. What are you doing? I'm changing the narrative, I said. I walked over to the unconscious Marcus. I grabbed him by the ankles. Help me lift him, I said. Where? Onto the table, I said. We hoisted Marcus's limp body onto the operating table. I draped the sheet over him, covering his face. I swapped the toe tag from the John Doe to Marcus's foot. He wanted to be dead, I said. Let's give him his wish. You're going to kill him? Holloway whispered, terrified. No, I said. I'm a doctor. I do no harm. I pulled a syringe from the crash cart. Propofol. I'm just going to keep him sedated until the audience arrives. I heard the sirens. The real ones. SWAT was breaching the lobby. The counterattack was complete. Marcus was the body. I was the widow. And the cartel was chasing a ghost on the roof. But the real trick? The money. The $20 million. I had Marcus's phone. I had his thumbprint. Unconscious people are very compliant. And I had 10 minutes before the cops reached the 4th floor. I unlocked his phone. I opened the banking app. I initiated a transfer. Not to me. That would be suspicious. I transferred the $20 million to a holding account for the Vance Pediatric Neurology Wing. A charitable donation. Irrevocable. He was going to pay for his crimes by saving the lives he didn't care about. Showtime, I whispered. I ruffled my hair. I started to cry, real, convincing, theatrical tears. I threw myself across Marcus's unconscious body. The SWAT team kicked open the doors. Freeze! Police! Help! I screamed. My husband. He's. I didn't finish the sentence. I let them assume the rest. Marcus Vance was about to wake up in a world of trouble. The SWAT team breached the operating room with the precision of a scalpel. Flashbangs detonated in the hallway, disorienting the cartel hitmen who were trying to saw through the roof access door. Inside the OR, I was huddled on the floor, sobbing, while the unconscious body of my husband, Marcus, lay slumped in the supply closet, a gun in his limp hand and a nitrous oxide mask near his face. Clear. Room clear, an officer shouted. A paramedic rushed to me. Ma'am? Are you injured? My husband. I wept, pointing to the closet. He snapped. He tried to kill me. He killed the patient. I pointed to the John Doe on the table, the corpse Marcus had mutilated to look like himself. The police swarmed the closet. They dragged Marcus out. He was groggy, his eyes rolling back in his head, mumbling incoherently about money and Mexico. To the officers, he looked like a drug-addled lunatic who had just gone on a rampage. Cuff him, the sergeant ordered. They hauled Marcus onto a gurney, strapping him down. As they wheeled him past me, his eyes fluttered open. He saw me. He saw the tears on my face that dried instantly the moment the officers looked away. Keisha. He slurred, the propofol still clouding his brain. Did we win? I looked at him with cold, dead eyes. I survived, Marcus, I whispered. You didn't. 3 days later, I sat on the other side of the glass in a federal interrogation room. Marcus was in an orange jumpsuit. The effects of the drugs had worn off, leaving him with nothing but the raw, terrifying reality of his situation. He looked at me. He looked at his lawyer, a court-appointed defender, because I had frozen all our joint assets. You set me up, Marcus hissed, his voice cracking. You told them I killed the John Doe. You know I didn't. The chief of surgery got the body from the morgue. The chief of surgery, I said calmly, leaning into the microphone, has already cut a deal. He told the FBI that you coerced him. He said you threatened his family if he didn't help you stage your death. He's turning state's evidence to keep his medical license. You're the ringleader, Marcus. Marcus slammed his fist against the table. I have the texts. The plan. It was a setup to escape the cartel. The cartel? I asked, feigning innocence. Marcus, don't be delusional. The FBI looked into your claims. They found the Ponzi scheme. They found the stolen millions. But they didn't find any cartel. They just found a greedy man who stole from grandmothers and teachers' funds. This was the final layer of the trap. The hidden secret suspense. I hadn't just framed him for the hospital incident. I had erased his victimhood. If the authorities believed he was running from a cartel, they might put him in witness protection. they might hide him. But if they believed he was just a greedy, violent fraudster who murdered a John Doe to cash out an insurance policy, they would put him in general population. And that was exactly where the cartel could reach him. "You can't do this," Marcus whispered, the realization dawning on him. "If I go to General Pop, they will find me. The Sinaloa, they have reach. You're sentencing me to death." "I'm sentencing you to justice, Marcus," I said. "You tried to kill me for money. You tried to leave me to die for your debts. I'm just balancing the scales." I stood up. I smoothed my dress. "Oh, and the $20 million? I asked. Marcus looked up, a flicker of greed still alive in his eyes. You have it? We can use it for my defense?" "No," I said. "I donated it." "You what?" "I donated it to the hospital," I said. "Specifically, to the Vance Pediatric Neurology Wing. It's a new facility dedicated to treating children with traumatic brain injuries. It's going to save thousands of lives. They're putting your name on the plaque, Marcus. In the lobby. Right next to the metal detectors." He stared at me. He realized the irony. His legacy would be a building funded by the money he stole, saving the lives he would have happily sacrificed. "You're a witch," he spat. "I'm a surgeon," I corrected. "I cut out the tumor." The trial was a media circus. Marcus Vance was painted as the surgeon of Wall Street, a monster who faked his death, desecrated a corpse, and tried to murder his doctor wife. The jury hated him. The judge despised him. He was convicted on all counts: insurance fraud, grand larceny, desecration of a corpse, and attempted murder. He was sentenced to life in federal prison without the possibility of parole. But the real sentence wasn't the time. It was the visibility. Because I had made the donation so public, because his face was on every news channel, the cartel knew exactly where he was. 6 months into his sentence, I received a report from a contact at the prison. Marcus had been transferred to a protective custody unit after an accident in the yard involving a sharpened toothbrush. He would spend the rest of his life in solitary confinement, living in a 6x8 concrete box, terrified of every shadow. He had wanted to disappear. Now, he was the loneliest man on earth. I didn't leave medicine. I didn't run away. I returned to Mercy General. But not just as a surgeon. Using the settlement from the civil suits against Marcus's firm, which I won by default, and the prestige of the Vance Wing, I was promoted. I am now the chief of medicine. I run the hospital with a level of scrutiny that terrifies the lazy and empowers the dedicated. I fired Dr. Holloway. I revamped the security protocols. I ensured that no one, no matter how rich or powerful, could ever use my hospital as a crime scene again. And Tasha? The nurse who saved me. She is my head of nursing. We run the place together. Every morning, I walk past the plaque in the lobby. The Marcus Vance Wing. People think it's a tribute to a tragic husband. I know the truth. It's a tombstone. It's a reminder that you can try to edit your life, you can try to delete the people you don't want, but the truth is written in ink that never fades. I found my peace not in a tropical hideaway, but in the operating room, under the bright lights, doing the work I was born to do. Marcus tried to make me a witness to his death. Instead, I became the architect of his hell. What this story teaches us is that you should never underestimate the person who holds the scalpel. They know exactly where to cut to cause the most pain, and how to stitch it up so it looks like an accident. If you believe that the sharpest weapon is a brilliant mind, hit that like button. And subscribe to this channel, because we are dissecting the lies and saving the truth, one story at a time. We'll see you in the next one.